Okay, so then I'll go ahead and start and let everybody know what the format is for this reading. The format is this, that all four people will read for 10 minutes, and each one of us will give a little background, our bios, and then we will read our stories. And they can choose anything they would like to read from their writings, either from their book or from their special writings. And I'd like to start with Neil Levy.
Hi, I'm going to be reading from a book I published about a month ago. It's called The Golden Buddha Mystery, but I'm not going to be reading from that part of it. I wrote that as a sequel to a mystery book, The Haiku Murders. And when I was all done with everything I wanted to say, it was only 20,000 words, which is too short for a book. So I pieced that together with another type of my writings, which are usually called flash fiction, very, very short stories. And I will, with that, start reading from it. Is everybody hearing me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
Good. All right, this one little piece starts, it's called Living in the Past. Living in a senior residence, I am advised by social workers to live in the present. This advice makes no sense to me. My past is so much more interesting than my present. For example, when Jane and I got married in 1969, we owned a Toyota Land Cruiser. We decided to take 6 months to drive from Berkeley to the Panama Canal, exploring along the way. Later, we traveled to many Pacific islands, as well as to most European countries and many in Asia. We raised 3 wonderful kids along the way. Here are some vignettes from our time in Central America. These are true stories, at least I think they're true. They happened 50 years ago, and I've told these stories so many times, I may be embellishing, but I tried to be real in it. We were driving in Honduras on a high desert stretch of the Pan American Highway. Though it was called a highway, at least at that time and place, it was nothing more than a potholed 2-lane road. I heard a police whistle and saw 2 policemen on the side of the road behind me. Exactly why I stopped my car is still not clear to me. I could see that neither of them had a firearm, a car, or even a walkie-talkie. 2 donkeys were tethered at the corner where an even smaller road intersected the Pan Am. Having already spent 4 months in Mexico, Guatemala, and El Salvador, I was fairly fluent in Spanish. In all honesty, I had been driving over 80 kilometers per hour. The policeman who had blown the whistle asked me to get out of my car. He showed me a ticket which said the speed limit was 80 kilometers per hour, and the fine for exceeding it was the equivalent of US $2. I had had enough experience in Latin America to ask him if I could give him the money to pay for the infraction. He pointed to language on the back of the ticket, which said the ticket must be paid at the courthouse of a town, which he told me was about 10 kilometers away. He told me that since it was past noon, the courthouse would be closed until tomorrow. I was afraid that this was going to lead to a very large bribe. I asked him again whether it was possible for him to deliver the money to the court. He paused and then said he couldn't, but I could talk to his partner. I went to the partner with the same question, and he directed me back to the first policeman. I wanted to try something out. I put 2 US dollar bills in my right hand, the same amount I would have gladly paid 10 minutes before. He motioned for me to go behind a big rock by the side of the road. There, he gratefully accepted the money given in a handshake. As we headed back to the car, he asked me how I was enjoying his country. I didn't have the heart to tell him there was nothing of interest to see in Honduras. This was before they had built diving resorts. We were speeding because we wanted to get from El Salvador to Nicaragua in one day, but I told him his country was very interesting. As I got back into the Jeep, he told me to be very careful in Nicaragua because under the dictator Somoza, the cops there were really crooks. Well, we did make it that day to Leon, a city on Lake Managua in Nicaragua. We reached there by late afternoon. We spotted a nice looking hotel, an old-fashioned 2-story brick building surrounding a pleasantly planted large courtyard. We took a room and after cleaning up, headed down to the courtyard where the bar was located. A bit later, dinner was served there too. We sat down at a large circular table where everyone else looked Latin and seemed to know each other. I assumed they were all local Nicaraguans. I began to talk to the man seated next to me. His English was good, but he was quite reticent. He was much more interested in what Jane and I were doing there than talking about himself. After a while, he learned enough about us to feel comfortable saying, "Well, I guess you're not CIA." Remember, in 1970, Nicaragua was ruled by the dictator Somoza. He maintained control with help from our CIA. Having concluded we were not CIA, he loosened up and told us his life story. He was born into an aristocratic landowning family. Somoza did not only steal from the poor, he expropriated land from the wealthy as well, so that he could own a plantation that stretched from the Atlantic to the Pacific. My acquaintance's family land was expropriated, and now he supported himself as a cobbler. We had talked for a long time, and around 10:30, I told him that we would be leaving Leon early the next day. So I wanted to take a walk around the city center tonight. He reacted very swiftly and with an urgency in his voice said, "Please do not go out tonight. Go to your room and stay there. When a local gives you advice like that, you follow it." And we did. We left town the next morning. When we got within range of a Costa Rican radio station, we learned that the rebels had taken over Leon's radio station the night before. My dinner friend must have known what was going to happen and that it would not be a safe night for 2 tall Americans to walk around. I've often given thanks to this man, whose name I cannot even remember, but I always rooted for the Sandinistas when they successfully fought to overthrow Somoza. That's it.
Oh, thank you very, very much, Neil. And I just want to mention at this time that The other part of the program will be 15 minutes at the end so people can make comments and ask questions of our readers. And so we'll give you an opportunity to do that. So I will go ahead now and read my story. And I just want to give you a little bit of my background, and that is I am a writer. I've authored and edited 4 books, and they all are used in the universities here as textbooks, especially in the ethnic studies department at UC Berkeley, as well as at San Francisco State, Napa State College, and other colleges in the area. And the book I'm going to be reading from is called 25 Chickens and a Pig for a Bride. And I'm going to read that particular story. And here is the book. I hope you can all see it. At any rate, I am going to use the accent of the Filipino farm worker in this story. And I also want to say that the term manong that I'll be using is a term of endearment or a respect for the elderly. It's manong for man, for the male, and manong for the female. But in this story, I'll be using manong for the farm worker. Celebrating my 18th birthday was a memorable occasion. It's customary for Filipinos to mark what they consider a girl's blossoming into womanhood with a big party or debut. In Tagalog, an unmarried woman is called dilaga. I remember the excitement and anticipation of the approaching day. Our household had been busy making preparations months ahead of the celebration, to which we had invited 150 guests. My father and my 16-year-old sister, Rosita, took me shopping for a new outfit I was going to wear for the occasion. They were both very patient and discriminating as I tried on dress after dress at the first store, and I picked one that I thought fitted me perfectly. We had spent the entire day searching for the perfect attire, and the dress I chose was a simple black silk dress with a small inset of gold brocade in the shape of a dragon placed slanted on the left shoulder. The round neck framed my face, and the cap sleeves and fitted waist flattered my slim figure. Evangeline, my dad said, "You look lovely in it." He also remarked approvingly that the dragon was a symbol of power, making me pleased with myself, having picked what he finally liked. It was the first black dress and a real sign that I had become a woman. Daddy and I planned the menu with the help of Grandma Roberta, Uncle Manuel, and sister. We agreed on a typical Filipino feast combined with my father's favorite American dishes: lechon, or whole roast pig, adobo, or chicken stew, fried chicken, potato salad, lumpia, fried egg rolls, pancit, sauteed noodles, whole baked salmon, roast duck, an assortment of vegetable dishes with meat or seafood, and for dessert, biko, a sticky rice cake, and a birthday cake with pineapple filling. My father's expertise in American and Filipino cuisines promised to make my party a fabulous culinary event. Grandma and Uncle were also skilled cooks and would assist in the preparation. Our guests eagerly anticipated the feast, and so did I. One Saturday morning, a few days before the party, in the midst of our heavy preparations, someone rang our doorbell. When I opened the door, I was surprised to see Manong Tommy, one of my father's friends who was probably in his 50s. Like most Filipino men in California at that time, he worked as a farm laborer. Manong Tommy was wearing a flashy sharkskin suit and a stiffly starched white shirt with a bright red bow tie. Sparkling gold and rhinestones cufflinks adorned his wristbands. He had red suspenders clipped to his loose trousers. His shoes glistened and smelled of black boot polish. I also caught a whiff of the pungent sweetness of the thick pomade on his black hair, perfectly parted down the middle. A diamond ring sparkled on the pinky of his left hand. He had a bright red kerchief and a large cigar in his breast pocket and was holding a black fedora hat. He was obviously garbed and groomed for some special occasion. Manong Tommy was a family friend who had visited our home on several occasions with the other Manongs from the farms in Stockton. He had been very kind to me and my sister as we were growing up, but we had not seen him in a while. He seemed very nervous, which was most unlike him. It seemed odd for him to be all dressed up so early in the morning. As I greeted him, I said, "My goodness, Manong Tommy, where are you going?" I thought he might be going to a wedding. Manong Tommy stammered, a shy, "Hello, is Stanley home?" And he quickly corrected himself in order to be polite. "Oh, no, I mean your father. Is he home?" Just then my father approached to see who was at the door. "Ah, it's you, Tommy." Daddy proceeded to happily greet him in their Ilocano dialect, which I barely understood, as Tagalog was our spoken language at home. Sister came to my side at the doorway, and she playfully elbowed me, and we both struggled hard not to laugh. Daddy graciously led Tommy into the living room. Filipino men of the same dialect or who came from the same province had a special camaraderie with one another, especially in a country so far away from their homeland. They treated each other as cousins, whether they were related by blood or not. They helped one another, especially whenever anyone got into trouble. Daddy and Manong Tommy sat down on the couch and began talking in Ilocano, occasionally switching over to Tagalog or English. Sisti and I took the chairs across from them and listened politely, as Grandma had taught us not to interrupt adult conversations. Meanwhile, Manong Tommy kept mopping his brow with his red kerchief and sneaking glances in my direction. After a while, I noticed that Manong Tommy was eyeing me quite often, and it began to make me feel uncomfortable. I deliberately avoided looking at him, Sisti, lest we burst into laughers, which would have been deemed impolite by our elders. Suddenly, fortified by summoned up courage, Manong Tommy stood up, faced my dad, and said emphatically in English, "Your daughter, Evangeline, will be 18, and I beg you, put her hand in marriage. I offer you, as a symbol of my love for her, 25 chickens and a pig for her birthday party and seal our engagement." Pointing to the front window, the diamond ring on his pinky glittering, he announced, "The chickens and a pig are in my car waiting to be brought into the house." I could not believe my ears. My sister and I suddenly leaped from our chairs, ran to the front window, and sure enough, there was the pig, its head hanging limply over the rumble seat of his old Model T Ford. The chickens lay in a heap on the back seat. Sisti looked at me in disbelief and said, "He wants to trade you in for a bunch of dead animals." We could no longer contain ourselves and ran out of the room in a fit of laughter. We heard Daddy's voice rise in anger. "You what? You want to marry my daughter? No, you can't marry Evangeline. Take your chickens and pig and go back to the farm." From the hallway, we watched Daddy pace back and forth, his arms waving in the air as he continued to bellow in English and Tagalog and Ilocano, as his friend Manong Tommy's face had turned beet red, his kerchief now completely soaked with sweat. Okay, I leave now." In his haste to escape from my furious father, he fled past us and out the front door, leaving his hat behind. And Daddy ran after him through the fedora, down the front stairs at Manong Tommy's running heels, and yelled, "Don't ever come back." I felt sorry for Manong Tommy. He had been very kind to me as I was growing up. However, I could see why he was desperate for a bride. Since eligible Filipino women were almost non-existent in the community, He probably thought that my having reached womanhood would present an opportunity for him to pick a young Delaga. I could understand Daddy's anger. He had high hopes for Sisti and me. He had always mentioned that he wanted most of all for us to be educated and to concentrate our efforts on college, not marriage while we were young. Finally, the day of my debut arrived. The table was a magnificent presentation to behold. The white lace tablecloth with orange and lilac flowers, Grandma and Daddy's sparkling white china, and a beautiful centerpiece of a whole roast pig adorned with purple and white orchids lays on a large hand-carved Filipino wood platter. I still have that platter. The attractive table setting and delectable aromas from the kitchen made me visualize Grandma's stories about the special feasts they used to prepare in her homeland of Angeles, Pampanga, Philippines. Daddy lived up to his reputation as a superb chef, and the guests, including Manong Tommy, enjoyed the sumptuous spread. After hearing about my father's angry confrontation with Manong Tommy, Grandma, who was more traditional than Daddy, had felt very sorry for their banished friend. At least we should ask him to come to the celebration. She had told my father, who later relented and allowed her to invite my spurned suitor. Therefore, Manong Tommy attended my party under Grandma's protection. Daddy carried on a gracious host, and with over 100 guests present, the nervous Manong managed to stay away from my father and me. Though Grandma's instigation and hospitality, however, he later returned to the family fold, especially after I had left home for college. Daddy eventually embraced him again as a friend, but he remained wary of him. After all, Manong Tommy had offered 25 chickens and a pig for one of his precious daughters. And I remember Tommy was at least 30 to 40 years older than I, and I would never have considered him even as a boyfriend. In 1990, about 4 decades after my debut, my daughter Nikki called me on Friday to tell me she was leaving for Point Reyes to spend a weekend, a romantic weekend by the seashore with her boyfriend. She confided that this might be the time he would propose to her. In any event, Mom, I'll give you a call. The next day, the phone rang. My husband, Bill, answered and announced that it was Nikki. My daughter told Bill, put Mom on the phone too. And I ran to the extension, and as soon as I said hello, Nikki said, when can my fiance deliver the 25 chickens and a pig? Several months later, several chicken dishes and a whole roast pig graced their wedding table. Okay, so now we have time, I believe, for questions and answers. So if we have any questions from the group, we'll be glad to answer them.
So please unmute yourself if you have a question, or raise your hand and unmute yourself and state who the question is for.
Vangie,
Yes.
I wanted to tell you, my daughter Shosh married a Kikuyu from Kenya.
Yes, I know.
And I was entitled to have, 20 turkeys and so many animals. And he did actually ask me for permission to marry. And I did. And I said, but I'm waiting for the animals. So we threw this back and forth for many, many months. And one day he came over to the house with a big bag filled with about 100 stuffed animals.
Oh my gosh.
So I had presents to give to any little kids who visited us for years.
Oh, oh, precious. So at any rate, I just want to note that Pat Hoggett was calling me as I was reading, so I couldn't answer her phone. Neil, would you like to read a little bit more while I call Pat?
Vangie, we can also have Pat come on the next reading. That may be
okay.
a little bit more easy, and just go with, because I see some people have unmuted, so I think there are some questions already that people have.
Okay, let's get the questions.
Yeah.
Vangie, this is Birgit.
Yes, Birgit.
So you were saying when you turned 18, you wore black for the first time.
Yes,
Before that time, it was not considered appropriate.
that's correct.
I see. Okay.
At least in our custom.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I enjoyed both of your stories, Vangie and Neil, too.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
So much
Thank
for
you.
very
Thank you very much.
Vangie, this is Bonnie Hamlin.
Yes, Bonnie.
Catch where you lived when you were a young girl.
In West Oakland, right
Oh.
here in West.
Okay, but
Yes.
so then was the party in West Oakland or was it in
Yeah.
Fresno or something?
No, it was in West Oakland.
Oh,
That's
okay.
where I lived. The gentleman was from, the farm worker was from Stockton,
I see.
Stockton, California. Hmm.
Okay.
And we
You
used to
enjoyed the
visit
story.
there.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that was a big Filipino community there in Stockton, especially the farm workers.
Enjoyed your story immensely, and Neil, yours was delightful too.
Thank you. I could read something else here, but I just wanted to mention this, why I wrote this story. I shared, the reason I wrote 25 Chickens, because it was sharing our humanity fosters understanding and world peace. This book reflects the richness of Filipino-American heritage, as well as the universal challenges and joys of growing up in an immigrant family in America. The heritage and cultural values brought by the pioneering Filipino immigrants sustained and nurtured our stories. I hope to share a world where we grew up with two cultures and multiple languages. And this book now is, I was honored by the Library of Congress for this book in 2008. And I was there at the library where they honored me, and the book is now in a very special place in the Asian library, and they have it under glass on a very beautiful piece of wood carved chest in the middle of the library.
Susanna, you want to unmute yourself, and then you're still muted right now. There you go.
Yeah, I had some questions about for Neil. What year did you go? 1970?
69.
Okay. That was I was just getting started in Central America. And did you think you needed to know anything about the political situation in those countries?
I had much more of my attention on how good the surf was.
That's I just want to say something about Neil's books. They are really fascinating. I really enjoyed the murder mysteries, and his haikus are fabulous in the book. In fact, that's what inspired me to start writing them again. And that was a great inspiration, Neil. Maybe you should read a couple of your haikus if they're there, if they're handy.
Let me see.
Okay, Neil?
Yeah, I'm looking for a book where I can grab some of them. All
Read
right, this is a series called Writer's Haiku. What thoughts lie within random access memory. Go forth, my sentence. Sentence in the air. If I can only grab it, story without end. Subject, verb, object combine to form a sentence. Not always simple. Words create colors, providing shapes for the night. Sorry, I don't paint. What is poetry? Not rhyme nor reason alone. Key to the heart. I wish I could write quite early in the morning a sunset poem.
Thank you. Thank you, Neil.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yes, Vangie,
Yeah.
about your father's friend, you know, offering, wanting to marry you and offering the animals. That was customary. So why was your father so upset?
Because he didn't expect his friend to come after his daughter. And this man was so much, older than I.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he just did not expect that. It was completely unexpected.
Okay.
And the fact that he would have all those chickens and pigs in the car all ready to go, like it was already a done deal. So my father was not very happy.
Yeah. That was,
and he was also very protective of us too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, that was very presumptuous. Yeah.
Yes, it really was.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was, yeah.
My father was very Americanized. You have to remember, he had been in the Navy for over 36 years in the American Navy. And so he was not into the Filipino type customs anymore.
Yeah.
But my grandmother was pretty much. And that's why she was very kind to, and helped to get him back into the family fold.
Yeah. Because
she understood the traditions.
Yeah. So there was already a culture clash, so to speak.
Yes.
Your friend was still in the traditional Filipino culture. And
right. Most of the farm workers were. They stayed within Philippine culture.
Yes. Yes. And your father had become Americanized and you had adopted.
Oh, yeah. Very much so. Mm-hmm. Oh, my father, into classical music, jazz, and he was a great musician and, really into the American culture. I mean, he was, definitely.
Two different worlds.
It was two different. And so that's why it was very unexpected. Even though he spoke the dialect,
yes,
he was still part of the Philippine culture too, but in a very different way.
Yes, yes.
Certainly not when it comes to his daughters being given away for some animals.
Well, that was the thing that struck me, Vangie, about your story, because your family was relatively cosmopolitan. And that's why you turned out the way you did. And here's this guy who is in another world and doesn't realize it. I mean, it's very, it was very funny.
Yes, yes.
Because he didn't realize how far away he was from being able to make you happy.
Yeah, right. I mean, there was just no way, that I would go for that older gentleman.
Right.
Not as a young girl. I mean, I was just barely 18. I had just turned 18.
Yeah.
I was, 17, 18. Mm-hmm.
So this was like your quinceañera.
Yes, right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Vangie, what part of the Philippines did your family come from?
My mother came from Nueva Ecija, Manila, and my father was from Zambales. And he joined the Navy in 1917, the American Navy. So you can see why he was very Americanized in many ways.
Yes.
very much so. I mean, he was the chef for Admiral Nimitz.
Oh.
I mean, the chef.
Vangie, do you have any of his recipes?
Oh, yes. I do cook. I have his recipe. In fact, I wrote it up. I probably will publish it in the Crest, because it's a wonderful pancit recipe, the very famous pancit of the Philippines, the noodle dish.
Oh,
And he makes a really wonderful one. And I learned a lot of Filipino cooking from my dad and my grandmother. They were both fabulous chefs.
You ought to pass some of that on to Ethan, who's our chef, the executive chef.
Oh, yes, yes. Well, Christian does very well, but, he waters it down because of our, the taste here, the American taste. So he's watered a lot of it down. And I keep telling him, do one without watering it down. Do it the real recipe for Filipino dishes. He will do it someday.
did your family have anything to do with the farm workers?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean,
We-
the political leadership and.
We had to go to the farms to help pick the vegetables. We helped the farm workers to pick tomatoes. We spent summers and weekends there, our family, to help them out, because you know how much they made for one box of tomatoes? 10 cents a box, 25 cents a box.
Uh-huh.
Yes, so we would help we labored on weekends and summer times just to go help them pick fruit and vegetables. And then we were very much honored by the farm workers. They gave us plenty of vegetables. We had stacks of boxes of tomatoes and asparagus. Yeah, so our tables were laden with wonderful produce from the farm workers.
Did the Filipino farm workers then combine with Cesar Chavez? With the
Oh
farm?
yes, absolutely. They were one of the first ones to start the grape strike, and they were right in the middle of it. Pete Velasco, who was a Filipino farm worker, was Cesar Chavez's secretary.
Oh.
So we had the Filipino and the Mexican workers combined there in the leadership of the farm workers union.
When I was in Salinas in 1971, it was still the growers really preferred the Filipino farm workers. They thought they got the best service from them. Of course, they didn't pay them an extra cent.
I just want to also mention that the farm workers also worked in the canneries in Alaska, and they would come through Oakland to, they were not allowed to stay in hotels or eat in restaurants. So Filipino homes were open to the farm workers as they traveled to the Alaskan fisheries. And so my home was open. My grandmother opened up our house, and we have rows of Filipino farm workers in the living room sleeping in cots and on blankets and so forth as they traveled through. And my grandmother would prepare all their meals for them and help them to make meals to take with them up to the to go to the family, to travel to Alaska. As I said, they were not allowed to eat or stay in motels because of discrimination. So the farm workers were a major part of our family.
Yeah.
They were just part of our family gatherings.
Vangie,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yes, Flossie.
Yes. What I like about your story. Here's your dad. He has a beautiful daughter. But he's not going to let her be married to an old man, even if the old man brought for his dowry, not your dowry, a bag of gold. Growing up in Brooklyn, if the immigrant Jewish family had an unmarried daughter. They couldn't wait to get rid of her, no matter how accomplished she was. But if she was not accomplished and very plain, they'd give her off to anyone. And there were some of the most tragic stories around our little neighborhood of daughters who were just 18, might have gone out with one guy one night and immediately got to be married off to anyone. Now, your story is so full of fun and hope and merriment. And you were free in many ways. You were free to be a vital, happy woman, despite all the knocks you got. You have a powerful, assertive, certain, how can I say, you know who you are.
Thank you, Flossie.
That's the most important thing. That comes out in your story. Thank you, honey.
Thank you, Flossie, very, very much. I feel I'm very deeply moved by what you just said. Thank you.
My pleasure. And Vangie, this is a good beginning.
Oh, great.
It's
I'm
a
glad.
good beginning. This will be a very popular Zoom activity.
I hope so.
Oh, I know it will. I know it.
And speaking of that, let me tell you who's coming up in the next programs. On Friday, the 24th, we have Wendy Williams, Maddie Scott, Tom Sloan, and Gloria Kresh. On Friday, July 31st, we have Flossie, Louis Perry, Ying Lee, and Ruth Campbell. And on Friday, August 7th, we have Nina Luce, Suzanne Jonas, Nancy Alexander, and Matt Mitchell. And then I'm going to get into the second week of August. And I just want to let people know that I have over 35 writers and over 15 authors listed. And I will be calling them as I work out the program for the next month of August and September.
Could you send us an email with them, because it was too rapid for me to get down who's talking when?
Oh, I can call you and let you know too, Neil.
Okay.
Angie, could you just send out a printed schedule to everybody? John will send it to the listserv.
Okay, I'll need help to do that. I'm just work on an iPad. Elizabeth, can I get help? Are you there? Elizabeth, did you hear that?
Elizabeth, you're muted.
I heard that. So
Okay,
what we
good.
can do is I can convert this session in a YouTube video and send the link. And maybe you and Neil can give me the titles of the books that you read from, so I can include that. And then we can also include the schedule of the people that are coming up. We can put it all in one email. What do you think?
That'll be wonderful, because these people are really, wonderful writers, and people will want to hear them. They don't want to miss them because they are really good.
Yeah.
I will tell you, Elizabeth, the name of my book that I read from is The Golden Buddha Mystery.
The Golden Buddha Mystery. Okay.
And I read from
Available through Amazon.
Say the last piece, Neil?
What?
You say The Golden Buddha Mystery, and what else did you say?
And I just said it's available from Amazon.
Oh, you're making some advertisement there. Okay, thank you.
And my book is 25 Chickens and a Pig for a Bride.
Okay.
And
Good.
I have a few copies,
Uh-huh.
and maybe I could raffle them.
Oh, that would be nice at some point.
Okay.
Yes. Well, thank you both. That was just so delightful to hear your stories and your travels and memories.
Thank you.
Quite something. Okay, I have a lot of background somewhere, but so
Yes.
Vangie, you want to wrap it up, and then
Okay.
we'll.
All right. I just want to say that thank you all for listening. I really appreciate it. And I think all of you are on my list to be the next writers. As soon as I call you, I will get you scheduled. But I see your names here as participants. And I just want to say thank you, Neil, for a lovely reading. I thought it was just wonderful. Thank you. And thank you, Elizabeth, for helping us, getting this started and being a part of it. I appreciate it. I appreciate all of you.
All right, we're going to end this. Thank you all, and we'll hope to see you next week.
Okay, great. Thank you.